The Buffalo Bills are beating the shit out of teams. The Buffalo Sabres got some really interesting decisions coming up over the next 10 days or so. Tons of stuff to talk about today on Talking Buffalo, part of the Blue Wire Network. Thank you very much, as always, for locking in, whether you're watching this on video, whether you're checking us out on YouTube. I appreciate you all. Like I said, a ton of stuff to get into today, and I am joined for a second straight week. My man, Joe Yerdon from Noted Hockey, co-host Maintenance Day Podcast, Bleacher Report writer, and on Sunday, anyway, a NFL reporter, covered the game for the Miami Herald. What's going on, dude? How you doing?
I'm doing good, dude. Yeah, it's first time in 6 years covering an NFL game. That was I was really hoping for it to be game of the century of the week. Which I guess the hype
it was headed that way early.
It was gonna be, but yeah, I mean, it turned out to be the blowout of the week. So whatever, it's fine. I had fun.
I was the first quarter and a half anyway. It certainly started out that way. So you were in the stadium, and although again you weren't there as a fan, you were there to work for the Miami Herald. I talked to Tone Pucks yesterday. He was on my show. He was at the game as a fan, and Sean McDermott, he said it was really loud. And Sean McDermott said after the game that it's one of the loudest games he's ever heard, or crowds he's ever heard inside that stadium. Like, what was the vibe like from what you saw with the fans on Sunday there at Highmark Stadium? It just felt to me like the energy, even just watching it on TV, you could just tell that this was a game. You know, every game's important. All 17 games, all the home games matter, blah, 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 blah. This was a game that Bills fans seem to want more than any other. Like, it's been a long time since I've heard it that loud on TV. What was that vibe like at the stadium?
It was pretty intense. I'm not gonna lie. I by the time I rolled into the stadium, it was, tailgates were already well underway. It was my first experience dealing with the stadium construction traffic and how things were getting bounced around there. The amount of studying I did into traffic patterns of the stadium, I had no idea if there were any roads that were closed or, any of the my usual path to get there was going to be a no-go. Turns out it was totally fine. Although I faked myself out because the way that I would usually go, the road that I would go down, I didn't see anybody on that road at all or anybody turn off there. And I'm like, does that mean it's blocked? Like, can I not get to where I'm supposed to go? Because Bills were able to set me up with parking at the Fieldhouse lot. So you're driving right into the middle of it. So I was a little bit like, I don't know, I hope it isn't closed off and I got to drive like all the way around and, get in that way and, sit in line and wait with everybody. But it was pretty harmless. It was pretty easy to get in and out, but but man, people were already pretty well gassed up by the time I rolled in and was walking around, kind of took in a little bit of what, the tailgates were going on and whatnot. And I don't know, man, you couldn't ask for a better weather day, honestly.
Oh my God.
70 degrees and perfect sunny skies. Like it's pretty ideal. So, everybody was feeling good. Everybody was having a good time. Even, the handful of Dolphins fans I saw, like they were getting razzed, but they weren't getting like, their head stuffed in a porta potty or anything like that. So that was, that was a relief to see, I guess. But yeah, it was a good vibe, but man, oh man, I tell you, when you're if you're ever in the press box there, or like, where they keep us in the one corner of the stadium.
Yeah.
You're pretty well shielded from any noise outside. It's honestly impressive because it's virtually soundproof. It's not perfect soundproof. Let's be real. That's impossible to do, but it's pretty quiet, all things considered. It's amazing. You could still get it you got a good feeling once, early on when they scored and it was like, oh, okay, all right, this place is pretty jacked up. So, that first score that they got, and then, the first Miami drive where the place is just going absolutely bananas. It was like that all day long, man. It was pretty intense. So yeah, fans were jacked up for good reason too.
I watched the game at home. I don't like going to games. I've talked about this before. I don't do it anymore, but when I used to do media stuff and I would go to games as a reporter covering the games, that's a different story. But as a fan, I just prefer I'll go tailgate once or twice a season, but I prefer to watch the game either at home by myself with family, a couple friends, or maybe I'll go to a bar and, have a couple, get some wings or whatever, watch the game there. I just don't like being in the stadium for the game. Lots of reasons. It would take me forever to go through all of them. But my family, my wife, my son, my daughter, they tailgate, and what they typically do is they'll Uber to the stadium back and forth. We live close enough that it's, that's relatively cheap to do that. Anyway, when they played the Raiders a home opener 2 weeks ago, my son went with his girlfriend. They Ubered back and forth, and he got all the way up to, I know people are listening or watching how well you know the area, but Reed's Jewelers, like on Miles Strip and Abbott, and they got all the way with no traffic from the Uber driver, a little bit past that to the stadium, which is pretty good. So this game, I went, it was about 8:45, and this time, like I said, my son, his girl, my daughter came over, and by the way, I dog sat for her and my wife. So they all wanted to go tailgate. They were coming back for the game, but I drove them to the stadium, or at least I should say towards the stadium. I barely got past Abbott and Lake Avenue before it was already getting backed up. So you could just tell there was more people, just not necessarily more people in the stadium because both games were sold out, but more people were there getting there early and getting their party on this week, certainly than the Raiders game. And like I said, it just translated. I seen a lot of videos and stuff, and you could just hear the stadium. It was absolutely, it was electric. And in a couple of minutes, I got some takeaways. And again, you were there, you were covering the game. I want to get some of your thoughts as well. Let me ask you a question though, Joe, and I want an honest answer. And well, I know you well enough to know that I'll always get an honest answer from you. So I had Tone Pucks on the show yesterday, and of course, the Bills, again, I said it right at the very top. They, for lack of a better term, they just beat the shit out of the Dolphins. And they've been beating the shit out of everybody over the last 3 weeks. You're a content creator, whether it's writing, whether it's doing Maintenance Day podcasts with you and Lance, whatever. You do, you're on a million different shows. So lots of experience with you in that realm. Tone told me, because it was all peaches and roses for the most part yesterday, when you're wrapping up a game, when the offense looks great and the defense looks great and the coaching looks great, and it was the same thing last week, and it was the same thing 2 weeks ago. It got to a point where it was just like, he says it's boring. It's boring to cover, not for a fan to root for their team. Yay, that's awesome. But when you're talking about a team and they're just going out there and running roughshod over everybody, after a while, it's kind of boring. As a content creator, you kind of want some critical things that you could dig into. You know what I'm saying? Do you kind of feel like that, like winning, if you're covering a team and you're talking about a team, that like winning the way they are as a content creator is almost like boring? We got nothing to fight about, nothing to really be harsh about it. And that makes shit boring. What's your thought?
I can see that angle of it, because it's just kind of like, well, we're smoking everybody. What's the big deal? Like, ain't no thing. I would still be poison brain that I am. I'd still be like, well, we still lost the first game. I'd still be pissed about that. 3-1 bullshit, should be 4-0. Blah, blah, blah. Still being mad about that. But like, this is one where I guess, I mean, maybe this is like the semi-old media mindset that I've got, is the best thing you can have when covering a team is either have them be top tier, absolute top list, or in the absolute pit. Anywhere like in that middle range, like if they're just like bad but mediocre, but like not first pick in the draft bad, like they're just kind of middling bad, that kind of sucks. If they're good, but like there's no threat of either winning the division or missing the playoffs, you're just kind of like, well, you're on autopilot to the playoffs, that kind of thing. That's a little boring. It's, I think when you've got a really top level team though, and it's still ridiculously early. Like we're four games into the year. So like whatever. And it still feels early, even though that's like a quarter of the schedule, for at least for the NFL, you're like, well, we're the way through. So
four games is a lot in football.
Kind of a big deal, but I get that kind of mindset. But I think that's a special thing for the Bills though, because there's no threat of missing the playoffs with this team. They're like, you open the season, like they're going to the playoffs. Let's just get there. So this whole 18 games leading up is just kind of, if you're a content creator, if you're somebody who likes to make videos or podcasts or whatever it is, you're just kind of spinning your wheels going like, all right, can we just get the fucking playoffs already? Like can we just get there to the important stuff? Like, cause they're going to make the playoffs. They should win the division. Home field, I guess is probably the main thing to keep the, the eye on the prize. But yeah, they're not really under the gun right now. Like, maybe you zero in on, maybe Allen, MVP race for Allen, or, maybe, somebody on the defensive side becoming like a big time breakout guy, maybe, like a Russo or Oliver, or whatever.
Sure.
Maybe you find these little battles to pick up, or these little causes to kind of, to get fired up and write about, make videos about, and do whatever. But like the big picture, you're just wait until the middle of January. You're just, which kind of sucks because you're wishing away the whole season. The whole season's fun. Like the NFL season's fun as hell. Like it's a game a week. You get geared up for it. You get fired up, and then it's, you're dramatic leading up into and out of it. Like that's fun. But for this team, I get it. I get being just kind of like, can we just get on with this already, please? I understand.
Well, I think Tone's place where he was coming from was like on yesterday's show. He likes to be combative with me. That's part of like our shtick. We've known each other for 30, 35 years. So he's just looking for something to bitch at me about, disagree, and, lock in. And so we can kind of debate a little bit. But anyway, it would be like, well, this guy looked great and this went great. And he's like, yeah, I gotta agree. I mean, after a while, like this shit is boring, man. We want to fight about some shit. And there's just the Bills ain't giving you nothing to fight about these last couple weeks.
See, the way you can take it though, and like I know it was like a total goof thing on SNL going back to the 80s. Do the whole super fans thing, like the Bears, like, Mike Ditka versus the New York Giants. Like Ditka 175, Giants -10. Like that's almost the kind of stuff you can do to just kind of screw around with this Bills season, because any of these games they get with some of these loser teams, stick around with it. Just be like, I ate 50 wings, I had 90 blue lights, and oh boy, I gotta go to the bathroom. Turn it into something kind of stupid like that. But it's, I don't know. You're never lacking for something to keep the attention of Bills fans. There's always something. There's always always something. And the thing, I guess the thing that gets me is the Bills. There are some Bills fans that can't help but be aggrieved by something every week, whether it's, I mean, it's pretty easy with the whole Kelsey and Taylor Swift thing. I think everybody's kind of like, all right, we get it. They're going out. Shut up thing. But like, it's the attention paid to other teams. Like, why are they paying attention to us? And I'm like, well, you guys hate the national talkers anyway. So you're not even watching them. And then you're just, when you do watch it, they're talking about somebody, not the Bills. And then when they do talk the Bills, you're like, they're wrong about this one thing and I hate them for it. It's always getting mad at something that's, kind of out of their control.
Well, let me preface this by saying this episode, there's just a whole shitload of positive developments to talk about, both on the Bills and on the Sabres side. And we're going to at least hit on some of that here in the minutes to come on this episode. But the one singular dark cloud hanging over Sunday, which was really unfortunate. And again, you were there, you were covering the game.
Yeah.
Tre White, and it was shortly, we're taping this Monday around supper time. It's official, what we all kind of feared and expected. Tre White did tear his Achilles, and his season is over. I got to tell you, man, forget football for a second, man. The human element of all this right now makes me physically almost to the point of being sick. The guy comes back, he tears his ACL, he works his ass off. And I'm telling you, if there was one narrative that I heard all off season from players, a couple that I've talked to, and some, that I have at least a little bit of a relationship with, or just reading and hearing from other people too, how hard he worked to get back to a level of what he was. He came back last year from the ACL, and at late last year, he was a shell of the player that he was. He worked so hard, and he was playing at that level again. He had a great training camp, looked good in the preseason, very good start to the regular season, and then this non-contact injury. And I'll tell you, man, the perspective on it, again, taking the football away from it, I've gotten to know a couple players here and there. One particular, I talk about him all the time. My family friend, Damone Harris, who's with the Atlanta Falcons right now. I know how hard they work. I know, I've learned what they sacrifice, what they have to commit to play at this level, and all the shit that they got to endure, and all the pain that they go through, and the sacrifices that they make with their family, and just so many things to play football at the highest level in the world. And that's what I kept thinking about when I saw like the moment when you knew. I mean, you were in the press box. We watched it on TV. We all knew. He started shaking. He was very animated. And then eventually he goes down on the ground. He knew right away he tore it. I mean, there was no question. He threw his helmet. The whole team came around him. Just my heart legit. And I'm so heartbroken for this. So heartbroken. I am heartbroken for the guy, not just because the Bills lost their best cornerback by far, but also because, they lost for this season, at least for sure. They've lost part of the heart and soul of this football team. And just by all accounts, anyway, I've never heard somebody say a bad thing personally about Tre White ever. I've never heard it before. Just a great human being and a guy who's dedicated himself to getting back to where he was. It was legit heartbreaking, man. It just fucking terrible. I hate it.
Yeah, it was. I saw him throw the helmet, and I immediately was like, "Oh no!" And then you watch the replay, and it didn't take much of an amateur doctor to understand what had happened there. Non-contact injury. He just pulls up, and then once he started crow hopping on one foot with one foot, I was like, "Oh man, that's." I mean, we didn't see it. We didn't necessarily see the same thing happen to Rodgers that first game. That was just kind of like a weird thing. And then we just see him. I just saw him hopping up and down. I'm like, dude, if his knee gave out, he would have crumbled to the ground. But the Achilles, it's like, I can't move my foot. Like
non-contact injury.
Just sucks. He's just trying to keep up with. I forget who he's running with. I don't know if it was Waddle or if it was Hill or whoever, or Barrios. But he was, just staying with him step for step, and then he just pulls up and starts high. So you're like, oh man, I know exactly what the injury is. And he goes off on the card, and you're like, come on, man, give this guy a break. It's I don't do a ton of Bills stuff, but I've seen him around. Like he came around Sabres one time years ago, the whole, Tre White,
the whole goalie.
Yeah. Doing that stuff with like Carter Hutton and Marty Baron and those guys. Like that was fun. And he's just such a, I don't know, eminently likable guy. Like NFL's got a ton of guys that you just immediately take to because they're just like, oh man, this dude is just having fun. He's having a ball out here. Tre White's that guy. Like he's just always having a good time, and he's a fierce competitor. He's a great corner, great everything. And this was the year where I was like, all right, let's see how much he's come back from the knee. Because last year it was kind of it's a little iffy. He came back like halfway through the year.
It wasn't himself.
Hard. Like that's hard. And knee injuries are really hard. Achilles though, man, like you're a corner and coming back from an Achilles, that's going to be really hard for him. And whenever he comes back, if it's next year or if he's might be 2 years, who knows? Achilles are wicked bad injuries. And second guy with an Achilles just in Buffalo. I mean, Jack Quinn injured his back in the in summertime, and we're not seeing him until January with the Sabres, and now Tre White with this. The demands are, physical demands of football are just so wicked. And for a guy who has to be top speed always to do his job, man, I just hope he can come back and play well and have it, be good with everything, because you want to see that guy. You want to see him succeed. You want to see him do well.
Some of these athletes in various sports for various teams, they're great players or whatever, but they're kind of assholes in real life. And it's just how it is. It's like that in any career, though, in any profession. It's not just limited to sports and professional athletes. But yeah, in this case, man, legit prayers for him that he can become fully healthy and get back again, and that his career isn't ruined because of first the knee, now the Achilles. I said it time and time again over the summer. Training camp, the two things that I noticed more than anything else was I thought Gabe Davis just looked on another level compared to what he looked like over the last couple of years, and Tre White and the battles he was having daily at camp with Stefon Diggs. It was just entertaining. It was fun to watch. And, I know a lot of fans sometimes will give the media some shit because, it can range from thinking that they're a homer for their team or that they're just too nice. You know what I mean? That they don't ask the tough questions and they're too soft on the team. Let's just put it that way. Not necessarily a fan of the team, but they're too soft. We hear that all the time. This is a case where if you're in the media, I don't give a shit who you are, man. Be public about it. it's okay to say how you feel about Tre White as the person. If you're Capaccio, Perino, whoever it is that's covering this team right now, and you're going to write up good things about him, good. You should. You've covered hockey. Can you think of somebody, maybe not to this extent, but I'm sure there's guys that you've covered that you genuinely grew to like as a human being, that you see them suffer an injury, maybe not quite this significant, but certainly serious injuries, and kind of breaks your heart a little bit because you've gotten to know these people on a personal level besides just what you see on TV every week.
Yeah, the first guy that comes to mind for me is Tage Thompson. Honestly, I interviewed him when he was here during the NHL Combine. His draft year. Because the Combine happens in Buffalo, so you're talking to everybody. And I was with NHL.com at the time, and I remember interviewing him because we knew he was going to be a first round pick. And he's a young 18-year-old kid. He's playing college hockey at UConn, and his dad was a coach in the AHL. So it was like one of those like slam dunk kind of stories to do. But he was just like such an excited kid and doing all that. And then the trade happens, and he winds up out here, and it was kind of cool to see him come back. And it was like, all right, well, this will be neat. Let's see how he does. And the hype machine wasn't really there for him. Even though he was a first round pick, there wasn't like a lot of like, oh, this guy's going to be a player. This guy's going to do that. Cause he didn't put up giant numbers in college. He put okay numbers up. Like that was fine. But then he comes here, and, from him, adjusting to, growing so quick the way he did from like age 16 to 18. I mean, he grew like 6 inches, 7 inches. Like it was crazy. He wasn't always a 6'6", 6'7" guy. He used to be like 6'6", 6'1", and then suddenly, he gets a little bit older, and he's, one of the biggest guys in the NHL now, and he's trying to adjust to that on the fly, and couldn't keep weight on, couldn't do all, is trying to stay stronger, but like your body's not cooperating because you're still growing up, you're still like 19, 20 years old. Stuff takes time sometimes. And then, he injures his shoulder late that game against Chicago. And then, he's just out for the next year. I think it was just about a year. And you just felt for him because like nothing was going right. That trade, everybody kills the trade, at the time, rightfully so. They took like a secondary package from St. Louis for a guy who ended up winning the Conn Smythe and got St. Louis a Stanley Cup. Yeah. Looks pretty bad. And Tage got a lot of the heat for that because he was the main prospect piece in that. And everybody's like, well, this guy better be really fucking good.
Right.
Well, took a little time, took a new coach, took the whole thing, but now he's he's a superstar. Like he's a superstar player. So it's really nice to see things like that happen with guys that have been through it. They've dealt with some of the stuff, they've gone through it. And in Tage's case, it was just amazing just to see this guy go from being like, maybe he'll hang around the NHL for a while to being like, wow, he's a top of the charts superstar in the league. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, he's had Tage, I'm talking about, to this point, a happy ending, so to speak, from where he was and what he went through. And at this point, I'm a sucker for a happy ending. So I really hope that ends up being the case for Tre White. Down the road, we'll talk a little, and it's no given. I mean, even physically, if he recovers, hopefully he will, and this is just something for down the road to talk about, but his age, which is not old, but the injury history now, which is really significant, and his cap figure for the Bills after this year. There's lots of factors. Who knows if that was his last down with the Buffalo Bills? We'll talk about that in the future. I certainly hope not, and I'm sure nobody wants to see that right now in Buffalo either, but it is something that you must keep in mind. By the way, completely unrelated, but you did mention Taylor Swift. I just got to throw this out there because right before we were starting to tape, I saw this shit. The Taylor Swift rub is still real. And by the way, for people who are saying rub, what do you mean? It's a wrestling term. You give somebody the rub, Anyway, I looked it up. Her most viewers on Sunday Night Football last night, they played the Jets. Most viewers this season since the Super Bowl, 3 million more than last week. Jeez. So people are the Swifties who might not even know shit about football. They want to see her. They want to get a glimpse of her in the press box, which God only knows you see that enough. But 3 million more viewers last night. And they ain't there to watch Zach Wilson play quarterback. That's not what they're tuning. They're not tuning in for that shit. So
I didn't even tune into the game because I didn't want to see Zach Wilson play a quarterback. I don't care who.
He played pretty well, though, to be fair. He did play pretty well.
Zeppelin on at halftime. I probably don't even want to watch the game, man.
I can tell you what, Pat Mahomes played like shit. The Jets absolutely They should have won that game. But yeah, when it comes to
That's
Taylor,
like to
man,
drag teams into the mud. That's going to be their style the rest of the season. Just
yeah,
if you
yeah.
want to be bad, we're going to take you down with us.
Yeah, and they are, and they did. Again, they did lose the Jets. I feel like even though the Jets were the underdog, I still feel like the Jets actually blew that game. It's like the Jets lost that game more than Kansas City won. Anyway, I want to get into a couple Buffalo Bills takeaways. Then I want to talk some Sabres with you. And the big one, let's just start with Josh Allen. There's so many things so many places we could go. But that first game against the Jets, all right, and listen, I think you know me well enough to know that I'm definitely not above criticizing the shit out of anyone on this football team. I'm not a homer. Sometimes people think I am. I get it. I understand. And I'm also not adverse to the national media ripping someone a new ass when I feel like it's deserved. But it's like that Jets game, he got buried in the national media. And I mean, like, to a point, like, come on, man. It was one, even I'm thinking it's like, it's one game and against a defense that over the last 3 years or so has just had his number. The Jets just have played really good against Josh Allen.
Yep.
And he has shown over these last 3 weeks, and I could do a whole podcast just on how good he's been. I'm going to put this up. If you're watching on video, this is on the screen here. His last 3 games, 76.6 completion percentage, 812 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. And that 1 interception was a third down bomb against Washington that essentially was a punt that pinned him.
Arm punt.
And a 125.8 quarterback rating. And the Bills have averaged 41 points a game over the last 3 weeks. This guy has went from overrated hype machine that's just dating celebrities to quite literally, and I'm not even exaggerating here, probably the front runner right now to win MVP of the NFL. If MVP voting was right now after 4 weeks, he'd be top 2 or 3. Absolutely, without question. He has just been sensational. Dude, you were there. You covered the game.
Yeah.
4 incomplete passes.
I'm just laughing about talking MVP 4 weeks into the season. That's all.
Oh, yeah. No. That is funny. No, you're not wrong about that. But my point is just what a turnaround has been for him. He literally accounted for more touchdowns yesterday than incomplete passes, or I should say on Sunday. And 1 or 2 of those incomplete passes could have been caught. He's just been absolutely ridiculous. And it continued on Sunday. He's just seeing the whole field. He's checking down. He's being aggressive when it's time to be aggressive. He's just, I don't know, man. He's playing at the level that if you're a Bills fan, you need him to be at, because there's not many players in the NFL that could do what he's doing right now.
I was joking around in week 1 watching some of the routes they had Diggs running in that game. And I was like, cool. They gave him Cole Beasley's, receiving tree. Like, here, just 5-yard ins, 5-yard outs, just get open underneath. And I'm like, I don't know that's going to work, man. But like they've extended it a little bit now where he's getting open 10, 15 yards down the field and getting open underneath. And just, I mean, felt bad for Miami's corner yesterday. Like
that number 4, dude, he got cooked.
Full marks to him. I spoke to him after the game, and he was just kind of like, he's like, hey man, sometimes you have bad games. He's like, if I let one bad game, get in my head, like I'm gonna have the worst season possible. He's like, whatever, guy's good. Like, what do you want? Maybe fix my technique. I'm like, okay, cool, man. Like, good, full marks, man. You owned it. He's like, yeah, man, he's good. Like, but I could have been better. It's like, yes.
So you were in the Miami. Were you in the Miami locker room, or did you talk to Miami players after the game?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this, because I can, Bills reporters, let me cut you off from the Josh Allen takeaway. I forgot that actually you were there to cover the Dolphins. You weren't there to cover the Bills. What was that vibe like? What was the mood in that locker room after just, quite frankly, just again, getting the shit kicked out of them in a game that a lot of people thought they were going to win? What was that mood like?
Well, you know what? It was interesting. Like, there were guys weren't like, nobody was like throwing helmets or getting pissed or any of that stuff. Like, everybody was pretty cool, considering, it's a 4 touchdown loss. Like, that doesn't look good. It's 48-20. Look, got your ass beat on, in front of everybody. But I spoke with safety Brandon Jones, who made his first start since October last year.
Yeah.
He blew out his knee last season with Miami. And he had a very reasoned approach where he goes, you know what, get taught a lesson like that. Maybe some guys in this room really needed that. You win 70-20 the week before and everybody's getting all high off of that. You start getting, this is me saying this now. You get high on your own supply. Some guys start thinking like, it's going to be easy. Like we're going to roll everybody, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, whatever, we got, they came out, taught us a lesson today. We'll learn from it. We'll move ahead. We got a whole season ahead of us here. He's like, but the main thing they said was like, probably good we got this out of the way. This happened early, because if you get smacked around like this, like say week 10, week 11, then you're like, oh boy, are we fake? Are we totally funny? Like what's going on here? But it's, I didn't look at this game in this perspective, but like this was like almost a must-win game for Buffalo, considering, because they lose, you're talking like, okay, well then they're 2-2. Both losses are in the division. One's against a team that's now 4-0 ahead of them, and then you're like, then God help. The discussion is here the day after if they lose to Miami, everybody's like meltdown city. But Miami was just kind of like, what? First loss, they handed it to us. They put it on us. Like, they did their job. But it happened early. Some guys needed this, so we'll just move on. And we got one more game with them later this year. And I'm like, well, it's week 18. There might not be anything to play for that way. Like you might, there might not be a division on the line. There might not be playoffs on the line. Who knows? Maybe the game will be for the division. You don't know. It's going to be the last week of the year. Who knows? But everybody's really cool. Like I was. Even Mike McDaniel was just kind of like, he's like, didn't look good for us. That's for sure. It's like, he was not happy with his defensive play, but he's, did the classic every NFL coach. Well, there's a lot I got to look back at the tape. I got to see, really evaluate performances, blah, 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 like whatever. But yeah, everybody was pretty measured. Everybody's pretty cool about it. So that kind of surprised me, because I know in my mind, and maybe this is like, being around Buffalo Bills fans and like the mindset of Bills fans where every game is like war, kill, must win. These guys were just kind of like, yeah, well, we got 13, even the corner there, he goes, we got what, 13 more games. He's like, man, we'll get some stuff figured out here. Well, there's nothing to get like crazy about yet. And I'm like, well, it's very measured. It's very sensible, mature way to do it.
Right before the break, you brought up a point, quoting Brandon Jones, and then your own thought as well. And that is a good way to take it. If you're a Miami fan right now, there's a lot of people probably nationally on these talk shows this week, a lot of fans that probably say Miami's a fraud. They ran over shit teams, came to Buffalo and got shellacked. Josh is your daddy, yada, 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 yada. Just like with the Bills in week 1, they lose to the Jets. They play like shit offensively anyway. Yep. And this team has got issues. They're not the best team in the division, blah, 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 blah. Point being, and I do believe this, I feel like Tony Romo said this on the broadcast. He said that he thinks that the Bills losing week 1 was the best thing that could have happened to them because it made them look themselves in the mirror and re-examine a lot of things that this is, you ain't going to play football like this and be good. Maybe for Miami, kind of the same deal. You're a little bit, like you said before the break, high on your own supply. Well, what better way to get humbled than to go into your divisional rival that you're trying to overtake and just get curb stomped over the last 2.5 quarters, because Miami came out and it was a great game early on. But yeah, that's a great point, man. You brought up a great point there. Look, we were talking Josh Allen at one point before I cut you off and started asking you about that. We could talk about Josh for days, man. Just like we could talk about Stefon Diggs for days too. I mean, this guy, I'm old enough to remember, Joe, when he didn't want to be here. When he wanted out. I'm joking, obviously.
All 3 weeks ago, get out of
I forgot the guy's name. I don't have the notes in front of me, and I don't care enough to dig it up. I feel I'm disrespecting an NFL player right now. But that number 4 from Miami just got cooked. He cooked him so bad. That
had him in blender a couple of times. Yeah.
But I want a takeaway that I have. Again, Josh is great. Stefon's great. We know that shit, man. I'm gonna tell you right now, the unsung hero, and I want to take 100% of it and divide it into 5 pieces at 20% each. The Bills' offensive line over the last 3 weeks has been so good. I mean, Max Crosby, they took him out of the game. He was never a factor in that game. Chase Young and an unbelievably talented Washington front four. Say what you want about the Commanders, but that front four is for real. Nothing. And then you go into this game and you got Christian Wilkins and Bradley Chubb. I said this on my show yesterday. I legit, for long stretches of the game, forgot that Bradley Chubb was even on the team, or that Christian Wilkins. I knew he was on the team, but he did nothing, man. This offensive line collectively has really gotten their shit together, maybe more than any unit on the team since that Jets game. They're protecting fine. They're protecting great. Their run blocking has been fine. It's just been fun. If you're a Bills fan, fun to see this offensive line to me, and especially Deion Dawkins. This guy was a Pro Bowler 2 years ago. I thought he was overrated and kind of borderline was a liability to the offense at times last year, quite frankly. This year, his grades, his PFF grades, everything that all supports, he's just been great, man. I'm fucking rambling here. The offensive line, Joe, the offensive line has been a very, 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 to me, pleasant surprise. All of them, including Spencer Brown.
Yeah, I'd say if there was anybody you wanted to pick on, it'd be Brown because he's taken some kind of dicey penalties, but it's not a ton of them. Like maybe like one a game. Like he's doing the Jerry Hughes thing, like one bonehead penalty game, and throwing it back in the day. But yeah, no, Lions played really well. Yeah, Deion's been very good. And I think some credit to that goes to Dorsey too, because I think some of the run play, trying to balance things, not balance it because you want to throw the ball. Like you got Allen, you throw the ball. That's what you do. But the way Cook and Murray and those guys are mixing it up and kind of keeping some defenses a little bit honest about it, I think that's helped out too. One of the things I was looking at from the Miami side yesterday was Brandon Jones, getting his first start. And so I was watching him a lot the first few series just to kind of see how they used him, what he was doing, and like how Miami's defense was setting up. And, he's known to be more of like a blitzing safety, a guy who wants to get in the backfield, do these kinds of things, but they were changing up the looks a lot. Like they go from a cover 2 to a cover 1 to just a man-to-man, like doing all these different kinds of things, trying to keep up with what, Buffalo was lining up with. But the Bills were able to kind of keep everybody off balance a little bit because the second they'd set up into like a cover 2 and the safeties are dropping back, Cook's running up, off guard or off tackle, and then they got to come in, and then they're coming up with like the same look, and then there's a couple of guys like jumping routes underneath, and then they're like, oh crap, here we go, or they're bringing 5 wide, and then the safeties have to pick a guy to cover. They don't have there's no choice. I mean, you can run a dime out there, you still got to cover the wide out. So it was very interesting. And the other thing I noticed Jones was doing a lot of spying on Allen, which is smart because he can run. But there was a few plays where like it was a cover play, but like everybody else is in man, but Jones was just sitting, playing home base, keep making sure Allen didn't get flushed out of the pocket. And I thought that was really interesting just to kind of watch those little things when you can kind of hyper focus on somebody for something, because, again, like inside baseball, inside football, I guess, the news side of it was like, oh, let's see how Brandon Jones does in his first start. And if there's a story there to write, then do that. But yeah, it turns out the defense didn't show up at all. And Jones didn't have a great game. So, just kind of go after about how bad the D was. But I mean, the Bills did so much adjusting on the offensive side that it just kept Miami off balance. And I don't think their D line or any of their pass rushers or just their rushers in general really got in any kind of rhythm, because the Bills were just kind of changing it up a lot.
You segued into what I think is, for me personally, maybe my biggest takeaway from this game, my single biggest takeaway in a game full of a lot of them. The Bills coaching was it was superb.
Spot on.
Both sides of the ball. Ken Dorsey kept things mixed up. That first touchdown when it culminated in that throw to Gabe Davis, man, that was just, you can't execute. You can't dial up plays better than that. They were just, I don't know what it is, but the offensive play calling, and quite frankly, I don't think the offensive play calling, other than a 2nd and 15 run in overtime against the Jets, I think Ken Dorsey's been good this whole season. That was a bad call in overtime. But aside from that, that Jets game was just bad execution. Josh just made a lot of stupid ass mistakes, man. Straight up. Yeah, he's been great. And I'll tell you what, man, Sean McDermott on the defensive side, the Bills have played 4 games and they've played good on defense 4 times. They've been superb on defense. I want to pull up a tweet from Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. Let me read this to you. According to Fantasy Points Outstanding Data Suite, Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa threw to his first read 80.2% of the time in weeks 1 through 3. In week 4 against the Bills, Tua went to his first read on 57.1% of his throws. Great job by McDermott's D, forcing Tua to work deeper into progressions. That to me stood out huge. Tua likes that timing, that quick. He gets rid of the ball faster than anyone in the NFL. And it wasn't even close coming into this game. But on Sunday, the Bills, and again, I'm not so much of an X's and O guys. I can't explain all these concepts and all these fancy terminology with defenses. But what I can tell you is that McDermott was switching up things so much. They were confusing they were rushing different guys. They didn't blitz that much, but they were bringing different guys, dropping different guys back, playing different coverages, not showing their hand pre-snap. It was a difficult day for Tua. He was going to his second, his third reads. They got to him. They were getting pressure to him. Just Sean McDermott, to me, our buddy Nate Gary, he tweeted this. It was like going to coaching camp. This was, if you're going to go to a coaching camp, this is what you'd want to see. Just, man, coaching was great.
Yeah. And I'm really curious the breakdown of that 57% number from the game, because I would bet anything, all of the numbers that like helped knock that down to 57 happened after the second touchdown series from Miami, because that's when they adjusted and they started jamming every receiver at the line, and bringing an extra guy into rush after Tua, and they played a lot closer to the line, because it was I say it's very easy for me sitting in the press box, or, anybody sitting at home watching it from the couch, but you could tell every play was a timing play. And, I know Ty Dunn pointed this out. I think it was after Miami's second touchdown, where it was just a beautifully run play, like a perfectly run, timed out play that like this guy was going here, this guy's going there. And then, what was it? Achan was just able to kind of like walk into the end zone. It was like, that was all done because everybody had the time to make that work. And the Bills were just kind of going along with it and like being like, I don't know, because let's be real here. Any other time in the past, most other times, I can't say every other time, that's ridiculous. But a lot of the times in the past, anytime Tyreek Hill's on the other side of the ball, they play terrified of him. Like they play him way off the ball. They're like, we can't let this guy get behind us. He's going to kill us, blah, 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 blah. They didn't give a shit about that yesterday. They're like, whatever, jam him at the line. Can he get away from you? No. Like he's fast. But like, if we jam him at the line, take away that timing and get in the backfield, Tua ain't going to find him. Like he's going to have no time to get the ball to him. A couple times he did have that time and found him, turned into an uh-oh moment. I'm thinking about like he had a 25-yard catch second half where he got free over the middle, and Tua was able to get free, got free and found him, but that was kept to a very minimum. So it was just really smart adjustments by McDermott and by the defensive coaching staff, because if they kept trying to go shot for shot with them, that game would have ended up being like 70-68 or something like that, because the Bills weren't able to do much of anything to stop them on those first two drives. And then they stuffed them the one time and the Dolphins were like, oh crap, they figured us out and they didn't know how to handle it.
It was on the fly adjustments too, because those first 5 drives of the game between both teams, they were all touchdowns, and Miami scored two really nice drives, their first two. And then like that switch flip. And you can tell one thing from the opening whistle, even though Miami had great success early on, they were not going to let Tua or Waddle get behind those safeties. And there was not going to be one of those, here comes a 77-yard bomb to Tyreek Hill who just outruns everybody. That was not going to happen on this
Waddle
day.
Was a non-factor all game.
He was.
One catch and it got called back on a penalty or something. Or another one later. He
was held to 4 catches, and 2 of them were like in garbage time, essentially. He had under 50 yards. After those first 2 touchdown drives, man, it was 3 and out, punt. And then the forced fumble by Milano that Bernard got. So 12 plays, 35 yards after those first 2 touchdown drives for the rest of the first half. And the coaching has been fantastic. But you know what, Joe, too? if you're going to have success on defense and you're going to take away a lot of things and play these different coverages, that's all fine and dandy. But your defensive line better come to play. Yep. And I'd say this with confidence we're a month into the season. I don't know that there's a better defensive line in the NFL right now that's playing better than the Buffalo Bills. They're legit 8 deep. Actually, I take that back. They're 9 deep. Kingsley Jonathan had a nice play. He's the 9th defensive lineman on that active roster. Mm-hmm. He had a nice play on Sunday. I got to throw a shout out to one guy specifically because he's not a stat guy typically. DaQuan Jones, man. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Holy shit, DaQuan Jones. We saw how important he was. We've talked about this. I know you and I have talked about this on the podcast last year when he didn't play against the Bengals in the playoffs, how much the Bills defense was suffered without him. So we know his role and how important he is. But now he's getting sacks. He's getting pressures. He has the 7th best pass rush productivity per PFF in the entire NFL right now. A month into the season. Ed Oliver's played great. Greg Rizzo has played great all season, but hasn't gotten any sacks. 2 of them came finally on Sunday. We know what Leonard Floyd's done. Oh, and by the way, Von Miller's coming back soon too. Literally their best defensive lineman. So they're doing this without him. I don't know, man. This defensive line just been, to me, the most consistent strength of this football team. And DaQuan Jones is the leader of that. I know he doesn't get a lot of love around the league, but he does in Buffalo, but not around the league. This dude is special, man. He is awesome.
Yeah, and they were wise to take advantage of Terran Armstead going down too. Like they just kept blitzing that left side of the Dolphins line. Just add another guy. Not even like blitzing, just like straight up rush 4, and then somebody else would kind of like squeeze their way in, and then suddenly Tua's getting it. Well, he's left-handed, so he's getting it right in his face. Guys blasting through the line, and he's just had nowhere to go at all. And Epinesa almost had another stupidly good play there.
Yeah.
Pass, but D-line was everywhere. Yes, in that game on Sunday, they were really impressive, and they just made life miserable. It's like once they got that first stop, like the whole game changed because everybody, like the Dolphins guys. Wasn't like they got nervous or whatever, but like Mostert put the ball on the ground a couple of times. They got it back the one time, and Tua didn't have any time, to make his reads. Had to like make his 3rd, 4th progressions, and by that time he's got a guy in his face. So yeah, but like total effort, and the line made that happen. Rousseau, I think, was outstanding. He gets a lot of the attention, anyways, but I thought he was excellent all game long.
Yeah, I can't tell you how impressed I was with just the defense. And again, this is a defense that had 9 sacks the week before. They dropped Tua 4 times. From what I've seen from Tua, great quarterback, but it's all about timing. And I feel like the Bills are trying to flush him out because he doesn't want to run, and understandably so. He don't want to run. He doesn't want to take hits. I felt the game plan on both sides of the ball for playing a team as explosive and as dangerous as Miami was as good as it can get. And they did as good as you can realistically do against that offense. And again, they just completely silenced Christian Wilkins and Bradley Chubb. They're too big. Jalen Phillips being out hurt them. But again, you can say Jordan Poyer didn't play for the Bills. So there was lots of, no excuses there for Miami. Like there'd be none for Buffalo. But Wilkins, Chubb, just
the secondary part from Miami with no Ramsey and Xavier Howard. And the thing that got a lot of us were like, why was Cater Coho continuing to have to be on Diggs? And they were holding, and this is Vic Fangio's fault, like whatever. His whole thing was that the corners played their side. So Xavier Howard is the left side corner and Cater Coho is the right side corner. So Bills kept putting Diggs out wide left, and the Coho is on him. And they're like, don't you want Howard? Isn't Howard your best guy out there right now? Don't you want him like following Diggs all over the place? And they were just like, no, that's not how we do things. And I'm like, okay, you'll have one corner who's playing well. Coho, hey, he handled his business after the game well. That's fine. He didn't play well. He didn't play well at all. And these guys were getting shredded all over the place. And like, Eli Apple was a non, was scratched from the game because he hasn't played well at all. So like, you're no Ramsey. Howard stuck on the one side of the field where they kept putting Diggs away from. And sometimes the problems are your own making. I think a lot of that was Miami's.
Yeah, but I'm going to be honest with you, man.
Diggs was great. Diggs played great.
He was. I don't think Howard's that good. I think his best days are long behind him. He got cooked, by the way, on that Gabe Davis touchdown. And the Bills had a lot of success against him last year.
That play is set up by a Coho with the unnecessary roughness penalty, pushing pushing him out of bounds late. Like,
good on him for having the right attitude, Joe, after the game, talking to you, honestly, and saying the right things. Because if there was ever a game in his life where he might want to wish it never happened, it might have been Sunday. We're not going to talk about this today. I got a bunch of shows coming out later this week. What the Bills might do at corner, I think a trade is going to be in play for the Bills going forward. I really do. Just don't trust Kyrie Elam. I don't think the Bills trust him. Plus, Christian Benford's got a little bit of a shoulder injury. Yeah. He's day-to-day. We'll talk about that, or I'll talk about that later in the week.
Taron Johnson left the game at some point.
Yeah.
I don't think that was too serious, but still.
No, right. He came back. But the last thing I wanted to ask you, Bills related, then I want to spend a couple minutes talking Sabres before we bounce. Not really a factor in the game, but still a big moment to me was Damar Hamlin being active in playing his first game. I talked about a little bit on the show yesterday. I feel like someday when that movie gets written, and it's going to happen, and this was like one of the culminations, his first game back, this was like a big scene. This is going to be a very, even if he didn't do anything during the game, a climatic scene in a future movie about Damar Hamlin just being all the way back again, being at the stadium. They didn't get to cheer for him during the game, but pregame, just him being out there and stuff like that. You could see the teammates, how excited they were for him and how excited he was as well. That's just a great human, Tre White getting hurt, such a shitty human moment to have to look at, but Damar Hamlin being out there and dressed and playing in him regular season game, just a great human element, great moment.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome to see him back in uniform again, because that was such a scary thing. And it'll be an even bigger deal when he's getting getting more action on the field and like gets to make that first play and gets to get that like out of the way, because I know that's get those first few series under your belt. It's gonna be you're wound up tight no matter what until you get that done and get it taken care of. Make that first hit, man, he'll be feeling good.
It's funny as I'm sitting here wrapping up with Joe Yerdon. It's I always tell, we talk football often, but to me, you're always the hockey guy. You and these kind of sidebar with some football talk. But you covering the game for Miami Herald kind of made this like still a very football-centric episode. I feel like I should pivot before we get out of here while I have you on the show again this week and actually talk about something that you routinely cover, and that's, of course, the Buffalo Sabres. We are taping this, again, dinner time-ish on Monday. As of now, Zach Benson is definitely still on this roster. As of practice today, as you tweeted out numbers, which, by the way, thank you very much. You forced me to go on Google. Joe was tweeting out the lines for Sabres practice.
Too many lines, man.
I don't know all the numbers well enough yet that I don't need Google. I know most of them, but there's still some prospects around and some youngsters. So I'm like, hold on, that's the right number. So ultimately I ended up having to Google them because of you. So thanks a lot. But anyway, Zach Benson is on a line with Tage and Skinner, which he's playing in during games. He's still there, and it's Monday, and it's October 2nd, man. The season starts in 10 days. Where are we at, man? Is this dude sticking around to start the season? I know he could get up to 9 games as kind of like an audition. Is he going to get that? What's your gut telling you right now?
So this has become a complicated thing, which is not what everybody wants to hear. Yes, he's here to stay. He's going to play forever, blah, blah, blah. This is complicated right now. And you're not going to be surprised to hear this. It's because of goaltending. Comrie, UPL, and Levi are the guys. Like, those are the main guys. They haven't ruled out the possibility of keeping 3 goalies. And Comrie has played extremely well in preseason. He's played super. You could argue he's been better than UPL has. Now, UPL got put in it was a bit of a tough game playing outside London, Ontario, in the Hockeyville game where he played 40 minutes, gave up 3 goals. One was a bit fluky, weird. Took a funny bounce off his blocker. The other 2 were like 2-on-1 and a breakaway. Like, okay, that kind of sucks, right. Especially when it's, Max Domi and John Tavares and those guys out on the ice. And you got a team mostly filled with, guys that are going to be in Rochester, but there, didn't look great on the goals, what goalie looks good on goals against them? Nobody looks great with a goal against them unless, it's whatever. And I think we've gone over this before. Comrie and UPL have to go on waivers if you're going to send them down. Right.
Yeah.
You can't put UPL on waivers. He's going to get picked up within 5 seconds of him being announced he's going to be on waivers. He's 24 or 25 years old. He's going to get picked up. Somebody else will pick him up and be like, Sabres screwed this guy up. He's our guy. Let's fix him. And then you've potentially given away a guy who has like that kind of, history in him where he can be damn good. You might give away a starter to somebody for free, and then that's bad news. It's a big if. And Comrie, I think you could waive Comrie and get away with it, because I think his salary is too high for anybody who might want to pick him up to add him. Like Tampa Bay, I don't think Tampa Bay could even pick him up. But Tampa Bay is going to be without Andre Vasilevsky for the first 2 months. So I don't think they can afford to add Comrie. Even Comrie's not making a ton of money, but it's enough so that a team like that couldn't just pick him up and be like, whatever, we'll keep him, waive somebody else, blah, 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 whatever. So if they have to keep 3 goalies, and mind you, they don't have to, they could waive one of them and say, good luck. If you end up a Roch, great. If you don't, good luck to your new team, good luck at your new team. I don't know that they're eager to pursue a trade for trading UPL. And I don't know that they're exactly over the moon to just run it with Levi and Comrie either. I think they like having that ability to be able to have those guys like kind of duke it out. But I don't know how you can send Benson back to juniors and say that you're serious about competing, because he's been great. 4 points in 4 games. He's not even looked out of place. He's playing with he's playing with Thompson and Skinner, but also he's earned the right to play with Thompson.
Right. Yeah.
It's not like they're just sticking him there because they're like, well, who else is he going to play with? Well, you can play him with Cousins, you can play him, play him with Middlestat, whatever. Playing with those guys for a reason. It's because he fits in and he plays really well with them. And, I asked Benson this after the Bruins game, and he's like, oh man, those guys make it so easy for me. It's great. It's a lot of fun, blah, blah, blah. Like, great. That's cool. I just don't know how you can look. Well, you can't look Tage Thompson in the eye, but you can look up at him and try to look him in the eye and say, we're dead serious about playoffs, Stanley
Put
Cup,
in your best 4 lines out there, your best 12 forwards. You got it. He's one of them. And you're confident even right now on Monday, October 2nd.
Yes.
That right now, Benson is one of your 12 best forwards on this roster now.
Absolutely. To me, he is. Right now, he is. But it's the roster thing, because the guys, the goalie thing aside, you still have 8 defensemen that originally were going to make the team. Do you waive Stillman? Do you waive Bryson? Do you risk losing one or both of those, one of those guys to waivers? Because you probably will. Maybe not Bryson, because again, money costs or whatever. But also, this team's not going to be giddy to be paying guys a ton of money to go play at Rochester either. Like, there's that side of it as well. Bryson makes like what, 1.7 million against the cap. You have a guy making over $1 million playing in Rochester? I don't think so. Stillman makes I forget how much Stillman makes, but like, it's big money to be playing in Rochester. Like, you don't want to have guys making good money playing down there. And that applies to Comrie too. Like, that's a lot of money for a guy to be playing in Rochester. And Rochester doesn't have like a prospect goalie that they're trying to clear the decks for. Like that's fine. Like, you can have veteran guys down there playing, like that's already going to be the setup anyways. But you have 2 options with Benson. He's either here or he's going back to Wenatchee. And I don't see how clear conscious you can send him back to Wenatchee and say like, well, this is exactly what he needs right now, because he's playing well with your NHL players and looks like he belongs. It's really hard to like, I don't know. This is why Kevin Adams gets paid the big bucks, because if you have to have that conversation with him, be like, listen, man, you're playing awesome. We love the progress. Go back to Wenatchee, get 150 points this season, and we'll see you again in April. I don't know how you can have that conversation and say, all right, well, who are you replacing him with in the lineup, and saying like, I don't know, pick a guy's name and say like we've got as good of a chance with this guy as we do with him. I don't know. It's I mean, listen, they're deep. They are really deep. They got a lot of guys. Like, you're talking about losing maybe like a Brandon Byro on waivers because he's looked awesome. Like, Byro's looked really good. Some of these other, the other kids, like you send him a Roch, you're fine. But like, boy, oh boy, man. And like, if your solution is that like, well, Matt Savoy's going to be healthy soon and we're going to get him back into action and get him and give him his games, then, I mean, I guess that's a good way to kind of, I don't know, move it down the road. But boy, oh boy, man, Benson's been so good.
Well, I think it would be more clear cut. Let's just say if he's on the opening night roster and the rule was, all right, he's playing that first game. Now you just burned a year of his rookie contract, but he could play 9 games. So it feels like it should be cut and dry. But then you talked about something, which is like literally, I have it in my notes to ask you this word for word. It says, I'm going to read to you what it says. My notes for Joe Yerdon on the show today. It says, not 3 goalies again, right? Like, I don't want that. Okay. And
the goalies don't want it either. I guarantee that.
I'm okay. I don't want to lose UPL or Comrie, but I can live with losing one of them. I don't know, man. I'm not going to sit here and try to be hockey expert, but I watch the games. I have an idea of what I'm seeing, and I know who I like and who I don't like. I'm not altering my roster and keeping one less forward or one less defenseman on my roster because I insist on having 3 goalies like we did last year, especially when ideally that one goalie, you're going to hope he's going to play 55 to 60 games at least for the Sabres this year. So screw that, man. If you got to waive Comrie or waive UPL, that's just my take, my opinion, my 2 cents on it. I don't want to have 3 goalies. Zach Benson could play up to 9 games for people who don't know. He could play up to 9 games without burning a year of his contract. Ultimately, I'm starting to get the gut feeling, not based on talking to anybody, except for you and a couple others, but that might happen. So the lines at practice on Monday. Again, he's with Tajan and Skinner. Tuckwood's playing with Middlestad and Greenway. Cousins is centering Paterka and Olofsson. And then Krebs, as he usually is centering with Okposo and Gergesens. That's your 4th line. That's your shutdown line. And Joe seems to be like that 13th forward. At least they're in practice anyway, because he's making this roster.
Well, I would argue any one of those 3, Jost, Byro, or Rusek, any one of those 3 could be your 13th forward. I think that's the competition. Jost is probably in the lead, but Byro, I don't know, man. Byro's played really well, and
he'd have to clear waivers.
Yes. Well, Rusek, I don't think Rusek needs waivers. The other 2 would though. And Jost, I mean, they got Jost off waivers last year. So
now, if you didn't if you did the unthinkable and you say, all right, Benson, you're not quite ready yet. We're not going to have you on this roster. And then Jost is one of the 12 forwards, and then you can still have Byro or Rusek to start the year, and they would be the 13th forward if you don't carry Benson. God, man, you better carry Benson if he's playing. And they still got 2 more games too, by the way, of course, right?
Yes.
2 more preseason games.
Yeah. Wednesday night against Columbus in Ohio, and then Friday night here against Pittsburgh. So yeah.
You feel like these are really for the sake of somebody like Zach Benson. These aren't just throwaway, get ready for the season preseason games. Like for somebody like Zach Benson, it's pretty big, these preseason, assuming he's going to play in them both. I would assume he's going to.
Yeah. I mean, they've got this. I mean, they got the camp down to a pretty even level right now. Like this is manageable for like the end of training camp. And they'll wait till like, at the last possible second to send anybody who's really close to making the roster down. Like, unless they're decided on like some guys right now and they're like, all right, get them to Roch. Because Amherst camp just opened up on Monday afternoon. So they're going there and they've got preseason games coming up this week. So, but it's, they won't be in a big hurry to send some, put some guys over. There's going to be a day this week where waivers are going to be like 9,000 guys, getting sent, trying to get guys to
sure.
But that's like the perfect day to do it because everybody's basically got their their final 23 decided. So then you can be like, whatever, just if somebody picks them up and they think that guy's better than somebody that they already were thinking they were going to keep, then all right, good luck to you. Good luck on your future endeavors. Go full WWE with it. But but yeah, it's I mean, the way it's set up right now, I mean, Benson's on your top line. So let me keep looking at it like he's on your first line.
Let me ask you one more question about Zach Benson right now. Let's say that he does start the season and they're going to give him those 9 games. And let's say that he doesn't exactly light the world on fire in those 9 games, where it's like, there's just no way we could possibly send this guy back. Right. He doesn't play at that level, but he plays steady to the point where he's one of the best 12 forwards on this roster still right now, today. But is there a case that, given his age and his size and his lack of experience, that maybe over the course, even if he plays 9 games early on, but over the course of an 82 NHL game season against grown-ass men, bigger guys in the competition, that just might really kind of wear him down big time, and then you are burning that first year of your rookie deal. So do you think it's possible that he can come, play 9 games, and even if he plays well, they still send him down, which it will piss off a lot of Sabres fans if that happens, but that's in play, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. I mean, that's always something that can happen because you can get an idea if that guy is ready. Once you get into the actual rigors of the NHL season, because right now it's kind of in half speed, 75% speed with, because you're just practicing every day. And even like a road preseason game, your morning skate is at home and then you hop on the plane to go fly and play, and then you're right back afterwards. But it's such a much different thing because you're playing against the best of the best. When it's actual NHL games, you'll find out pretty quick. And we've seen this happen in the past before. I think Sam Reinhart played a handful of games, after they drafted him, and he got popped pretty nasty in one of his first couple of games, and then was like, no, he ain't ready yet.
Right.
He thinks he's going to be able to pull some junior hockey stuff out here, and he got trucked by somebody, and he was like deer in the headlights for most of the rest of that game, and was like, no, he ain't ready. He's going back, which he was going to go back anyways because they were tanking. But it's neither here nor there, Pat. Leave that alone. But I mean, yeah, that would absolutely be a possibility. I mean, that makes it a tough conversation for any of the forwards that you're going to either put on waivers or send back to Rochester and be like, hey, you're not making it now, but keep the legs fresh because in a couple of weeks you might be back here, just to let you know, or keep fighting down there because there might be a phone call coming down the road where you're going to be the next guy up here when we get this, see if Benson's ready or not. But so much of what they do, and the size and strength thing is definitely something at the front of their minds. Granado's mentioned this a couple of times, but Benson's been able to do things that make up for lacking in that strength and that size. So, it's telling us one thing, but also saying something else where it kind of cancels it out. So it's like, I get it. They got to keep everything kind of close to the vest with this. So I understand, but yeah, I mean, geez, if he was skating with if he was not skating with Thompson, I would say it was I don't know, maybe he's just holding, place holding for somebody else, and then do a couple other cuts, and then he swaps out, and that's that. He's playing with Skinner and
right,
Thompson, and they've got Tuck with Middlestat, and those two guys ended last season together, and they were awesome. Middlestat was one of the best guys in the NHL the last month of the season, so people are like, oh, Tuck's going to go back with him. I'm like, no, I think Middlestat and Tuck's the thing. So, but yeah, I don't know, man. It's a very hard decision coming.
I love that you keep going to, and you're right, that he's playing with Tage and Skinner. It'd kind of be like Bill's minicamp. If a receiver is looking great, but all the reps are coming with Kyle Allen throwing him the football or Matt Barkley. No, he's out there with Josh Allen in the first string offense making plays. He's not doing it against backups, on the bottom of the depth chart. Last question, then I'm going to let you go. I'm getting into interrupting Joe Yerdon dinner plan territory here. Yeah, look, there's a lot to be excited about. Obviously, when you think about Quinn and Savoy and Kulik and Benson, if he doesn't start the season, 4 guys, that's like a 30-year forwards that ain't even going to be here early on in this season. I wanted to end by asking you actually about Yuri Kulik, because it was about maybe 6 months ago or so. it felt like the way he ended the season with Rochester, that he had an excellent chance to make this team out of camp, especially after Jack Quinn went down. But from everything I've, read and watched following, you guys who are covering the team on a regular basis, it just seems like Kulich having a big camp / preseason has never materialized. And now it seems like pretty much like a lock that he'll go down to Rochester, which isn't being critical of the player. He's very young, and that could be a very good thing for him. But am I right in saying that just it never really materialized, or it hasn't, I should say, at least, because there's still time left for Kulich through camp?
Yeah, no, it's I mean, I think he put a lot of pressure on himself here, because I think there's a he went back to Czechia in the summer to work out, do all those things, and get ready for the year. And I know the major part. I mean, all these guys are preparing to make it to the NHL. Like let's not, like nobody's going home to work out and be like, boy, I can't wait to get back to the AHL next season, or I can't wait to get to the E. Play in that second second tier league. Nobody's doing that. So he was preparing with the mindset and the idea that like the NHL is a very real possibility, right out of camp. And I think he put a lot of pressure on himself. We saw it certainly during the Prospects Challenge, where he was kind of, really pressing in a lot of his shifts. And, guys were trying to feed him on the power play, which obviously that's what you're going to do with a shot like that. But the 5-on-5 games really hasn't quite been there. And I think there's, he hasn't, and again, he hasn't played with any of like the really big guys so far. And, he's kind of gone between playing center, playing wing a little bit. So, he's 19, man.
19,
like that's the thing. He's 19.
Younger than my son.
Right. So he's 19. There, he had a really good year in Rochester last year, and get him back with the Amherst. Tell him like, hey man, we need you to pick up where you left off last year and be better in these certain things. That's where having Seth Appert down there really helps out, because he's able to get on the, to get these guys focused and get them on that level. And honestly, it's why you hire Vinny Prospal to be an assistant coach too, because if you have a guy from the Czech Republic who had a long NHL career, was a very good NHL player, to be an assistant coach, to work with a guy who's from the Czech Republic, Czechia. Yeah. Pretty good thing to have in your back pocket down there for when he gets there, because it helps to have somebody like that. And, if Rusek goes back down there, I mean, Rusek was like kind of like a big brother for him down there too. So, having like a guy like that who's a big figure in Czech hockey to work with it will help both of those guys out a lot. I think Rusek's a little bit closer. Would have liked to have seen some stronger games out of him. There was some shifts here and there against Toronto that I like, but the whole thing, not totally there. But it's I'm not sweating Yuri Kulich yet. Would have been cool to see him have a monster camp and kind of force the issue and be like, yeah, no, that spot's mine, and force his way through. But I think right now a little more time's okay, because he'll learn, he'll get better, and I know they want to get that 5-on-5 game to be a lot stronger.
19 years old, man. Goddamn.
He turned 19 during the AHL playoffs last year, Pat. Like, come on.
That's nuts, man. All right, that is going to do it. And by the way, if you want to read more of Joe's thoughts and observations and feature stories, go to notedhockey.com, $5 a month. Can't go wrong with that. Also, Joe and Lance Lazowski from the Buffalo News, they regularly do the Maintenance Day podcast. Go check that out as well. Thanks, man. It's always fun having you on. The fans want the starting 5 draft. We got to do it at least one more time. So I'll get you back on soon and do that. But thanks, man. I appreciate you as always, dude.
Oh, it's always a good time, Pat. Always fun to be here.
All right, guys. I'll be back with another episode tomorrow, and then Thursday I'm going to have Aaron Quinn from Cover One. Talk to you then.